Supreme Court has recently come up with a verdict on triple talaq, and as a person who has personally participated in all these judgment process, court proceedings, what is your take on the issue of triple talaq?
Well, I think sadly it's very, very easily and perhaps deliberately misunderstood by people. And it's important to understand that triple talaq is part of a system of talaq. It's an easy system of putting an end to an unhappy marriage, which is now the prevailing trend in the world, that you don't force people to live together despite their having differences that cannot be reconciled. So nobody is against talaq. As of now, nobody is against talaq. But people often think talaq is unilateral to the husband. The answer is no. Talaq is not unilateral to the extent that the husband has to go through certain procedures, i.e., attempts to reconcile and have a way of settling your differences. If that doesn't happen, then talaq can be given. Talaq can also be delegated to the wife in the contract of marriage. It can be delegated to the wife, so she also can have the same right. Without delegation too, she has a right under khula, which is to get the marriage brought to an end by going to a qazi or going to a judge and asking the judge to put an end to the marriage. These are all methods which do not involve fault. They are no-fault divorce methods. So, different for a man, different for a woman marginally because of their circumstances, but both have a right unilaterally to end in marriage if the marriage is not a successful marriage. There's also a mubarat, which is an end to the marriage by consent, something that we have seen in recent times in other jurisdictions and in other systems. 1400 years ago was provided to a couple to get out of a marriage by consent. That's what talaq is about. Now, what is triple talaq? Triple talaq is giving talaq 3 times and giving it in one instance. And of course, 3 times becomes important because if you've given talaq 3 times, you cannot take it back. If you give it once, you can take it back. If you haven't taken it back after a 3-month iddat period, which is the waiting period, you can still get married to the same woman if she wants to and she is willing. Same thing can be done a second time. But after the 3rd time, the man no further has a right to get married again to that woman, because the religion or the system treats it as now being a frivolous way of treating your very serious bonds of marriage, etc. So the 3rd time is the end. Now the only question is, nobody can complain that the 3rd time should not be an end. Under any reasonable provision, that would be accepted. The only point is, if the 3rd time happens immediately, should that be prevented? And the answer is that the 3rd time, immediate 3rd time, was never allowed in Islam, and this is what the Supreme Court has held. There was an exception in 2 or 3 cases, but generally it was not allowed, and there is no problem about saying that it can be allowed instantly. It can't be allowed. That's the end of the matter. And if that's what it is, and the Supreme Court said it cannot be done instantly, that's the end of the matter. Why would we need legislation for this? Be that as it may, if the legislation comes and the legislation says if you give talaq 3 times, it must be understood it is 3 times, not at the distance of 1 month each time, but 3 times instantly. That is what is prohibited. Whether it should have been made into a criminal provision or not, there's very serious doubt, because getting criminal law to intervene more and more into the home, into the family, is not advisable. It is not something that's preferred the world over. And in any case, the issue remains as to what is to happen, because if you can say talaq once and end your marriage, and if you say it 3 times and the court says, or the legislation says you can't end your marriage, what stops you from saying it once 5 minutes later? So, I mean, I think that this is a very serious complicated way of approaching something on which the data does not indicate that this was a very serious problem. Even if one person suffers it, it shouldn't happen. I agree, it shouldn't happen. But the Supreme Court had already said that it will have no validity, it will have no impact, and it would be virtually non-est.
Okay. So you are saying that this is not a problem which was not associated with it was not a mass issue, but probably a few persons from a community might have.
Some may have suffered, but there are always black sheep in everything. Correct. And people who misuse the law. Now in this case also people might misuse the law by wrongfully saying that I've been given triple talaq, etc. So let us see as time goes by as to what kind of data is available and whether there's a need to take a fresh look at it at all.